Hello, my brothers and sisters. We are in Genesis chapter 12 of the Amplified Bible. Now, in Haran, the Lord said to Abram, "Go for yourself, for your own advantage, away from your country, from your relatives, and from your father's house, to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you with abundant increase of favors, and make your name famous and distinguished. And you will be a blessing, dispensing good to others. And I will bless those who bless you, who confer prosperity or happiness upon you, and curse him who curses or uses insolent language toward you. In you will all the families and kindred of the earth be blessed, and by you they will bless themselves." So Abram departed as the Lord had directed him, and Lot his nephew went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. Abram took Sarai his wife and Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the persons, servants that they had acquired in Haran. And they went forth to go to the land of Canaan. When they came to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land to the locality of Shechem, to the oak or terebinth tree of Morah. And the Canaanite was then in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "I will give this land to your posterity." So Abram built an altar there to the Lord, who had appeared to him. And from there he pulled up his tent pegs and departed to the mountain on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord, and called upon the name of the Lord. Abram journeyed on, still going toward the south, the Negeb. Now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down into Egypt to live temporarily. For the famine in the land was oppressive, intense, and grievous. And when he was about to enter into Egypt, he said to Sarai his wife, "I know that you are beautiful to behold. So when the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife,' and they will kill me, but they will let you live. So I beg of you that you are my sister, so that it may go well with me for your sake, and my life to be spared because of you." And when Abram came into Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. The princess the princes of Pharaoh also saw her, and commended her to Pharaoh, and she was taken into Pharaoh's house, harem. And he treated Abram well for her sake. He acquired sheep, oxen, he donkeys, men servants, maid servants, she donkeys, and camels. But the Lord scourged Pharaoh and his household with serious plagues because of Sarah, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this that you have done to me? And why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister, so that I took her to be my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and get away from here." And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they brought him on his way with his wife and all that he had. Genesis chapter 13. So Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the south, the country of Judah, the Negeb. And now Abram was extremely rich in livestock, and in silver and in gold. And he journeyed on from the south country of Judah to Negeb, as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai. And when he had built where he had built an altar at first, and there Abram called on the name of the Lord. But Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents. Now the land was not able to nourish and support them, so they could dwell together, for their possessions were too great for them to live together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's cattle and the herdsmen of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanite and the Perizzite were dwelling then in the land, making fodder more difficult to obtain. So Abram said to Lot, "Let there be no strife, I beg of you, between you and me, or between your herdsmen and my herdsmen, for we are relatives. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself, I beg of you, from me. If you take the left hand, then I will go to the right, or if you choose the right hand, then I will go to the left. And Lot looked and saw that everywhere the Jordan Valley was well watered. Before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, it was all like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as you go to Zoar. And then Lot chose for himself all the Jordan Valley, and he traveled east, so they separated. Abram dwelt in the land in Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the cities of the Jordan Valley, and moved his tent as far as Sodom, and dwelt there. But the men of Sodom were wicked and exceedingly great sinners against the Lord. And the Lord said to Abram, after Lot had left him, Lift up now your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward, for all the land which you see I will give to you, and to your posterity forever. And I will make your descendants like the dust of the earth, so that if a man could count the dust of the earth, then could your descendants also be counted. Arise and walk through the land, the length of it and the breadth of it, for I will give it to you. Then Abram moved his tent and came and dwelt among the oaks of the terebinths of Mamre, which are at Hebron, and built there an altar to the Lord. Genesis chapter 14. In the days of the kings Amraphel and Shinar, Erech and Elasar, Chedorlaomer and Elam, and Tidal of Goim, they made war on the kings of Bera, of Sodom, Birsha of Gomorrah, and Senab of Admah, Shemamber of Jebim, and the king of Bela, that is Zor. The latter kings joined together as allies in the valley of Siddim, which is now the Dead Sea of Salt. 12 years they had served Chedorlaomer, but in the 13th year they rebelled, and in the 14th year Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him attacked and subdued the Rephaim and Ashtaroth, Canaan, the Zuzim in Ham, and the Emim in Shavah Karathim, and the Horites in their Mount Seir, as far as El Paran, which is on the border of the wilderness. And then they turned back and came to En Mishpat, which now is Kadesh, and subdued all the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites who dwelt in Hazazon Tamar. Then the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Bela, that is Zor, went out, and together they joined battle with those kings in the valley of Siddim, with the kings of Chedorlaomer and of Elam, and Tidal of Gim, Apharel of Shinar, and Erech of Elasar, 4 kings against 5. Now the valley of Siddim was full of slime, or bitumen pits, and as the king of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, they fell, they were overthrown there, and the remainder of the kings fled to the mountain. The victors took all the wealth of Sodom and Gomorrah, and all the supply of provisions are departed. And they also took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods away with them. And then one who had escaped came and told Abram and the Hebrew, one from the other side, who was living by the oaks or terebinths of Mamre, the Amorite, a brother of Eshcol, and Adner. These were allies of Abram. When Abram heard that his nephew had been captured, he armed and he led forth the 318 trained servants born in his own house, and pursued the enemy as far as Dan. He divided his forces against them by night, he and his servants, and attacked and routed them, and pursued them as far as Habah, which is north of Damascus. And he went and he brought back all the goods, and also brought back his kinsman Lot, and his possessions, the women, and also the people. After Abram's return from the defeat and slaying of Chedorlaomer, and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shavah, that is the king's valley. Melchizedek, king of Salem, later called Jerusalem, brought out bread and wine for their nourishment. He was the priest of God Most High. And he blessed him and said, Blessed, favored with blessings, made blissful, joyful, be Abram by God Most High, possessor and maker of heaven and earth, and blessed, praised, and glorified be God Most High, who has given your foes into your hand. And Abram gave him a tenth of all he had taken. And the king of Sodom said to Abram, Give me the persons and keep the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted up my hand and sworn to the Lord, God Most High, the possessor and maker of heaven and earth, that I would not take a thread or a shoelace or anything that is yours, lest you should say that I have made Abram rich. Take all except only what my young men have eaten and the share of the men, the allies who went with me, Anor, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them take their portion. Genesis 15. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am your shield, your abundant compensation, and your reward shall be exceedingly great. And Abram said, Lord God, what can you give me, since I am going on from this world childless? And he who shall be the owner and heir of my house is this steward, Eliezer of Damascus. And Abram continued, Look, you have given me no child, and a servant born in my house is my heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, This man shall not be your heir, but he who shall come from your own body shall be your heir. And he brought him outside his den into the starlight, and said, Look now toward the heavens and count the stars, if you are able to number them. Then he said to him, So shall your descendants be. And he, Abram, believed in and trusted in, relied on, remained steadfast to the Lord, and he counted it to him as righteousness, right standing with God. And he said to him, I am the same Lord, who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldees to give you this land as an inheritance. But he, Abram, said, Lord God, by what shall I know that I shall inherit it? And he said to him, Bring to me a heifer 3 years old, and a she-goat 3 years old, a ram 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he brought him all these, and cut them down the middle into halves, and laid each half opposite the other. But the birds he did not divide. And when the birds of prey swooped down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away. When the sun was setting, a deep sleep overcame Abram, and a horror, a terror, a shuddering fear of great darkness assailed and oppressed him. And God said to Abram, Now positively that your descendants will be strangers dwelling as temporary residents in a land that is not theirs, Egypt. And they will be slaves there, and will be afflicted and oppressed for 400 years. But I will bring judgment on that nation, whom they will serve, and afterward they will come out with great possessions. And you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried in a good old age. And in the 4th generation, they, your descendants, shall come back here to Canaan again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full and complete. When the sun had gone down and a thick darkness had come on, behold, a smoking oven and a flaming torch passed between those pieces. On the same day the Lord made a covenant, a promise, and a pledge with Abram, saying, To your descendants I have given this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river Euphrates, the land, the Canaanites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Raphaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites.